Okay, so we're using the textbook Shabbos. Usually the class is on Wednesday. We made a switch this week, and we are speaking about we're in the middle of the chapter concerning cooking, baking, and so bringing something up to something that is uncooked, bring up to a temperature. This is on page 166. So that is by this is on page 166. What temperature did the hand recoil? That's called the hand recoils, so that's called reaching the beginning of cooking. But to have some idea of what this means. Let's have here a list of different items. If it's look at this. Okay, this side. Let's go back to this. On this side. So we're speaking about the temperature that it says here on page 166 is 40 degrees Celsius, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a medium temperature, which is not very comfortable if you keep your finger inside the cup that has that temperature. It's tolerable. And here we have on number 3, hot bath water, comfortable for some adults, is 104, which is 40 degrees. So in the house, average water is at hot water at medium temperature is 120, 125. A hot cup of coffee with some milk is approximately 125. Hot tea without any addition is 165, and a hot bowl of chicken soup could be as hot as 180. So when it reaches the temperature of 40 Celsius or 104, it's not very hot, and that's already considered halakhically that it's hot enough to start the cooking process. The bottom of page 166, we have the different stages of how something is kept. Kli Rishon Fleet, first vessel is the hot that's placed on the fire, and even if it's removed from the fire, that is still considered Kli Rishon, the initial vessel in which the food was heated up. And even if you take it off the fire, it's still going to have the same properties as if it was on the fire. So anything that cooks on a pot that's on the fire would also cook when it's off the fire, but it's still retaining that heat. So that's still called the Kli Rishon. So whether it's still on the fire, taking it off the fire, it still has the same properties of Kli Rishon. And therefore, the putting something into the Kli Rishon that would go into the category of being cooked is considered cooked. So we have, I don't know if we spoke about this last week, but we have the term ein bishlach bishul, something that was pre-cooked and it's dry, reheating it again would be permissible. While something is on the fire, you could not place it inside the pot, but when you take it off the fire, then you could reheat something that was pre-cooked and dry. So let's take, for instance, you have noodles, and you have pre-cooked noodles. You want to heat them up. You want them to be hot when it's going to be served. So are you allowed to put them into the pot of soup that was initially, in which it was initially cooked? So while it's on the fire, while it's on the blech, you're not allowed to. Anything that's still on the blech, you're not allowed to add to that pot. Once it's been taken off, then you are permitted to add something that was pre-cooked and dry. So for instance, if you have noodles and they are drained and there's nothing wet about the noodles, they may be moist, but if you were to touch them and touch your hand, the moisture would not be transferred. That's considered halachically dry. Or rice or noodles. So you would be permitted to put it into the Kli Rishon, to put it into the pot in which the pot of soup, when the pot of soup is off the fire. We also have the croutons. And we have also soup nuggets. And we have crackers, and we have matzah, and we have challah. Are you allowed to add any of these items that I just mentioned into the pot that's off the fire? So we have our croutons, our crackers, matzah, soup nuggets. What's the status of all of these?
Already baked.
So these were not cooked, they were baked. And we have a rule of yesh, bishul, achav, afiyah. If something was baked and then you put it into a liquid that's hot, that's considered cooking. Even though it is edible already, the fact that you're changing the form from baked form to cooked form, that's called cooking. So in a Kli Rishon, and we're going to say the same thing is also going to apply to Kli Sheni. Kli Sheni would be the taking from the soup that's off the fire. We're now going to put it into a bowl. So the soup that's in the pot, that's Kli Rishon, that's number one. The bowl in which we're going to place the soup is Kli Sheni, that's the second vessel from the initial one that was cooked. Now, Kli Sheni also cooks things that are kale habishul, things that cook easily. Kli Sheni cooks. So if you were to put in an egg in a Kli Sheni and let it stay there, it would cook. Tea, uncooked tea, cooks. So now we have, what about adding the baked goods to the bowl of soup that's still hot? So it's hot enough to cook. And therefore, you cannot add in your bowl of soup the crackers, the matzah, the soup nuggets. Now, what about croutons? The little ones, awesome croutons. I'm calling it by name. Awesome croutons. Could we add that to our Kli Sheni? Could we add that to our bowl of soup? We just ladled out the soup into a bowl. It's still Kli Sheni, hot, didn't cool down. Can we add those little soup croutons?
The croutons are also baked, no?
Hmm?
The croutons are also baked?
That's what we were going to be questioning ourselves. Were they baked or were they deep fried? If they were baked, the answer is no, because we're going to be cooking a baked crouton. However, that's why I said awesome. Awesome deep fries it. They are fried, deep fried. So deep fried is considered halachically cooked. And they're dry. So therefore, the croutons could be placed into the bowl of hot soup. If you want to add the croutons to the kli rishon, to the pot in which the soup was cooked, off the fire, you're also allowed to do so because they're considered halakhically cooked, even though they looked baked, but they were cooked. So that's why I only speak about awesome, because I asked the mashgiach when he was here about awesome products, how do you prepare them? They told me they're deep fried. So therefore, they could be placed in. But all others, when you're not sure, you have to wait until the soup cools down, or in a kli shlishi, or the third vessel. So now, what about adding salt to our bowl of hot piping soup? Now, seemingly, the salt is pre-cooked and is dry. However, what's going to happen to the salt when you put it into the hot soup? It's going to dissolve. Therefore, what do we treat it? Do we treat it like a solid or do we treat it like a liquid? We had learned last week that if there is a liquid that became cold, reheating it on Shabbos is called cooking. When we spoke about the noodles that were cooked and are dry, we could reheat them. However, a liquid could not be reheated. Once the liquid becomes cold, heating it again would be as if you're starting from the very beginning and you are cooking this liquid. So therefore, if we have water, tea, anything that becomes soup, anything that becomes cold, I gave the example, if we would take the boil up water and then put it in the refrigerator and take it out, and I would ask you, is this water boiled or not? And you would tell me, you don't know what I did. I took the water, cooked boiled water from the teapot, and I put it in the refrigerator and take it out, and I asked, was this boiled? And you would say, you can't tell. Because once it becomes cold, then whatever cooking was done to it, unless you were taken to the laboratory, I'm sure you'll be able to find out if it was cooked or not. But as far as we're concerned, it's considered uncooked, and therefore any heating up again of liquid is considered cooking. So now our question is, what happens if something dissolves? What status does it have? Does it have the status of a solid, or does it have the status of a liquid? And our answer is liquid. Something that dissolves, we treat it as a liquid. There are different opinions about this. And therefore, when we want to add salt or we want to add sugar to something that is very hot and a cliché, so we would not be permitted to do so. So therefore, if you want to add the salt or other spices to your soup, it would not be in a cliché, it would be in a cliché, in a third vessel. If you don't want to add anything to it, then eat it as is. You don't have to have a cliché if you're going to eat the soup as is. You're not going to add anything to it. You're not going to be putting any crackers or matzahs or challah. You're just going to be eating the soup as is. You're not going to be adding salt. It's flavored just right. Then eat it in the cliché as hot as you wish. But if you do want to add other items to it, then you have to know what you're adding, if it's be considered that you're cooking the item that you're adding or not. Now, let's see here. So if you do want to add something, so it would be kli rishon is the pot that's on the fire, being placed into a second vessel, which is kli sheni, and put into a third vessel, which is kli shlishi. At that point, you could add your other items that you wish.
Can you write these three on the board?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is the ladle considered?
That's what I'm just looking to see what page it's on. It's on page 169. I was going to anticipate this question, and we'll see what it says here. Okay, so let's look at the question is we're now serving the soup. It's off the fire. We're serving it with a ladle. Is the ladle considered a klisheni? And therefore, the bowl that you put it into will be a klishlishi, and then you are not restricted in what you're going to be adding to this bowl. Or is the ladle still considered the same heat as the soup in the pot, and therefore that is still kli rishon? You put it into the bowl, that's going to be our klisheni, and then you'd have to take it to another vessel, second remove from the pot. So let's look on page 169. Let's see what it says. With regards to a ladle which is used to remove soup from a pot on the fire, if the ladle is left in the pot, the status of the ladle is that of the pot itself is considered a first vessel. What happened to the reason why a klisheni is reduces the heat is because the walls of the klisheni are cool, and we're going to now diminish the heat. However, the ladle that was left in the pot is as hot as the contents of the pot itself, and therefore it's considered a first vessel. Consequently, one should be strict and regard the individual bowl in which received the ladle as a second vessel, and it's forbidden to place any food in which is prohibited of cooking applies. However, if the ladle is used only for serving, that's not left in the pot, we could be lenient to consider the ladle to be a second vessel, and then the individual bowl is considered a third vessel. Now, the problem would be if we're going to leave the ladle out and not be placed in the soup. Let's look at the next paragraph. One should be careful to make sure that the ladle is clean and completely dry of all liquids before placing it inside the pot in order to avoid transgression of malach of cooking on Shabbos. So now we have our ladle. Okay, we're serving. Okay, this is our ladle. Receiving the soup. Now, what we did is we did not leave it inside. We took it out, and we're serving the soup. We put it down, and now I want to serve the next soup, a bowl of soup. What did we learn about the liquid that cooled down? Becomes cold. Reheating this again is a problem. And therefore, what do we have to do before we're going to serve our next bowl of soup?
Put it in the fridge.
No, we have to wipe it. We can't have the cold.
So literally just serving one bowl of soup, wipe it and put it back?
No. So let's see what we do. We serve a bowl of soup. And I put it back in here. This is still hot.
Yeah.
So I leave it in here. I have no problem about wiping it with whatever it is. I'd rather have this to be a kli rishon and keep serving the soup without any problems with having to wipe the ladle each time, rather than serving the soup, putting it down, taking it to the table, and then when I come back again, I have my ready to I have to keep wiping it.
The person who served soup first, technically their bowl would be the kli shlishi then. If the brand only their bowl.
That's correct. Yes.
So if you wanted to add salt to your soup, you would have to take your bowl and pour it into another bowl?
Yes. Okay. So this is our pot of soup. This is our ladle. This is our kli sheni. And this is our kli shlishi. So this is number one, is the pot of soup. This is the first bowl, which is kli sheni. This is our next one, which is kli shlishi. And to this, I'm going to add whatever I want. I'm not restricted in what I'm going to add to this bowl of soup. Now, as far as the ladle is concerned, again, if I leave it in here, I'm not concerned each time I serve it. I'm not concerned about wiping it. It didn't cool off. I keep serving with the same ladle. Once I put down the ladle and it becomes cold, and there's still droplets of soup in the ladle, before I'm going to serve again, I'm going to have to wipe it and then serve. Okay, clear with the status of the ladle?
Sorry, can you just write the 3 on the board?
Yes.
Thank you.
Нужно перелить. Ну, это можно будет горячее от... Лишь подождать чуть-чуть, когда если нем не холодно, если просто... Не холодно, но такое, что оно не просто не варилось. Это все работает, даже если добавочка очень горячий. Все равно перелить.
Здесь масло было.
Нет, у нас Я думаю, что у нас
First, so let's so we have the first vessel, first vessel, the food was cooked in it. Second is the first bowl. Third is the third bowl. That would also apply to our coffee, tea. So if we have the instant coffee, the instant tea, 1 second, instant coffee, instant tea, sugar, salt, all other things that dissolve. How do we treat it? So we're taking a more strict opinion. Just the Tzemach the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, expresses that there are again 2 opinions about something that is a solid, dry, pre-cooked, and it dissolves. Is it considered still a solid? Therefore, you can add it to a klisheni, or is it considered like a liquid that you have to have a klishlishi? We take the more strict opinion. So when making instant coffee, instant tea, adding sugar, adding salt, all of this would be in a klishlishi. Yes, your question.
Okay, so what if you cooked the matzo balls separately from the soup, and now you have hot soup and matzo balls, and you need to add the matzo balls to the soup?
Yes. So let's have an answer to that. Our question is, we have matzo balls that was cooked in another pot, and now we want to add it to the soup that's taken off the fire. Can we place it inside?
Are they hot? Are they cold?
So again, if it's hot, then that would be fine. If it's hot, would be the definition of hot would be it is edible now. It's the right temperature that people would eat. They would not say it's too cold. Please heat it up for me. So as long as it's still, the second one, I just want to emphasize this as well. As long as it's so now, as far as a liquid is concerned, as long as it is hot, that it is edible, we consider that cooked. And therefore, we would be able to, so let's say we have a hot cup of coffee, and we want to add more water from the urn, from a kli rishon. Do we need a kli sheni, kli shlishi to get to our beverage that we're drinking? And the answer is, if it's still comfortable to drink as now, because it's still considered warm, hot tea, then you could take the water directly from the urn and pour it in. So we're going to go from a kli rishon into the tea that's still considered cooked because it is edible as is now. So if the matzah balls were warm, and it is, one would serve them as is without putting them in the soup, but someone would eat the matzah ball, they'd say it's good, comfortable, it's considered warm, then you could add it to the soup. However, if it turned cold, what's our next thing to be concerned about? What do we do? Cold matzah balls, can we put in the soup, or we have to put in the kli shlishi? What do we do? Opinions? Matzah balls.
Are they dry?
They're wet.
Here we go. Are they dry or wet?
They're wet.
So if they're wet, then we have to do kli shlishi. If they're dry, it matters again. Some people make hot matzah balls, they're so hard. You can wipe them with you can wipe them down. So if they are in a state that you can wipe them down, then they would be dry, and then you plop them in. But if they're not dry, I guess it's hard to eat. Anyway, so the answer would be, it matters if it's dry or, so if it's still warm and edible as is, then you could add it to the soup. The matzah balls. So if it's in other words, the scenario is it was cooked in another pot, but if it's still warm before you're going to add it into your soup, then that would be permissible. If it's cold, then only if it's dry can you add it. If not, you would add it to your kli shlishi. Now, something that is, yes.
This might be a dumb question, but like if you have a label that you keep in the pot, considering that situation, and then you like put the soup in a bowl, but you want to move it into a shishi. If you use that same ladle, are you putting it back into the solution? You know what I mean?
So, what do you,
like I have a ladle, like
yes.
I have three bowls of soup.
Yes.
Like this is the one
Yes.
that was cooked clear shine,
Yeah.
and then I use my ladle with the clear shine, and I put it from here. Now
Yes.
I get it from here to here, and I
Yes.
use that same ladle.
Yes,
That's
still
putting
warm.
it
That's
back.
still warm. Yeah, I think it's still warm. As long as the ladle is still warm,
Right.
then
but it's not-
there could be. It's not the same heat as the pot of soup itself. But if the liquid that's inside is considered warm, matters how much it cooled down. It's a very technical question.
So if it's instantly, that's just.
If in doubt, do without and wipe it. If it's still warm, you can tell if it's warm or not. I mean, it matters how quickly you're doing things. Now, so we have the idea of kli rishon, kli sheni, kli shlishi. Once it's kli shlishi, it's cooled down already because the vessel itself. There are two actions that is happening when you're pouring from one to the other. It's in the air, it's cooling down, and so the walls of the vessel are also cooling down. So there are two steps that's cooling down from one vessel to the other. So we have the kli sheni pouring into the kli shlishi. So while it's being done, it's in the air cooling down, and also in the vessel cooling down. Now, this is all, kli rishon, kli sheni, kli shlishi will all be with something that's a liquid. So as it's being taken from one vessel to the other, it's gradually cooling down. And what happens if we have a solid? You have our cholent that was piping hot, taken out of the kli rishon, put into a plate. What's the status of this cholent, or we're going to speak about a meat that is dry, mashed potatoes that are dry. What is the status of putting them into a plate and then transferring from this plate to another plate? Is that going to make a difference as far as the heat of the solid is concerned? And the answer is no. We treat it as a kli rishon until it actually cools down. How does it affect us? By what kind of additions you're going to be putting on it, spices or salt, sugar. So on a solid, we do not count kli rishon, kli sheni, kli shlishi. We actually go by how cool it is.
You can't put salt on hot water.
That's correct. So since the salt dissolves, even though it's pre-cooked, we treat it as a liquid, and therefore we're heating up the salt with the solid, and one should avoid doing so. One should wait until if you want to add the different additions to the hot solid, you would have to wait until it actually cools down. The solid is, we're speaking about like mashed potatoes, and you want to add the margarine to it. Okay, now. Let's look at page 175. This is something that's quite common, one should be aware of, that we have the faucet. There are some that have two faucets. One is hot and one is cold. So on Shabbos, which one do we use? Cold. What happens if we use the hot one? What would be as a result of using the hot one? What would happen? As you're taking the water out, usually it'd be an automatic refill. As you're taking the water out, the cold water is going to go into the boiler, into the hot heater boiler that's cooking up your water, and now you're cooking the cold water as you're letting the hot water out. As the water goes out, cold water comes in and it's going to be cooked. So we do not use the hot faucet on Shabbos unless you close the automatic refill. And no cold water is going to go in. You're just going to be using the hot water that has already been stored from before Shabbos. But if it's the automatic, then as you're using the hot water, cold water is going in. So if you have two faucets, the cold one, the hot one, you let the hot one stay for Shabbos, let it rest. But we do have the ones that it's one faucet and you move it to the right or to the left, depending. If it's to the right, it would be cold water, to the left would be hot water. You have to be aware that when you're using it, it should be on the cold side. When you have two faucets, you don't have to think about it. You just know that you're using the cold faucet. You don't have to, there's no thought goes into it. But when you are using that faucet that has the right and left, make sure that it's on the right before you open it up. See where it is, see that it's on the cold side, and then you'll open it up. There will be no problem. We spoke about returning something that was on the fire. We had that last week. Let's go to insulation. Let's call that one 182.
Let's say someone before you didn't know they were using hot water. Now, if you turn it to cold water and stop it in hot water, is that fine?
Stopping it is fine.
It's just not returning hot.
Okay, so we don't have to start this next thing. So we'll just have one more. We'll finish it next lesson that we have. We'll just finish the what I'm going now. The last thing I think we still have to speak about is the insulation, insulating, and we'll speak about that. So basically, we've covered most of the material. So those who are new to this class, please read the chapter on baking, page 163 through 184. So you'll have all the material that we covered. We're going then on to the next lesson. We'll finish this one next week, and Mitzvah Hashem, and go to the next one, which is preparing the curtains, the next step. The next week I brought the thermometer. I guess we'll cook the thermometer. We'll take next week. Is there a source of hot water here? So we could see klisheni, klishlishi, whatever, how the temperature drops and all of that. There is hot water here. Okay, so let's check it next week.
The hot plate.
The hot plate in what regards?
If you have the hot plate on all of Shabbos and then you take food that's in a container and put it on the hot plate on Shabbos day, that was cold, and you put it on the hot plate.
And it's dry, and it's dry.
And check.
And does it have any dials to it?
No,
So
it's just a solid.
So one could,
You could do that.
But only if the food is dry. Like if you
Food
have
is dry.
chicken, like, if you touched it and you touched something else, you would get it.
that's nice. You have to take a towel and wipe it actually, dry it.
Even if the chicken, so if the chicken is dry at the touch, but once you start cooking it, or like not cooking it, but heating it back
Heating
up,
it up.
juice would come out.
Juice can come out, that's still, I'd have to look into that. There's something that specifically speaks about that. What happens if you have something that has fats in it, then the fat melts and the fat comes
Right.
out, I'll look into that. Good question.
The hot temperature here is 40 degrees. This is already when the cooking process is